Through the suffocating curtain of snow that consumed the northern Montana wilderness, a female Marine lay motionless beneath white camouflage. 19 hours. 19 consecutive hours of absolute stillness in temperatures that could kill an unprepared human in less than 3. Gunnery Sergeant Emberly Thorne pressed her face against the frozen earth, feeling ice crystals sting her cheekbones like tiny knives. Her breath came in controlled intervals, shallow measured, invisible. Each exhale froze instantly against the Schmidt and Bender scope pressed to her eye socket. 3 kilometers ahead, 43 Marines were about to die. The forward unit 1st Platoon Bravo Company was trapped in a natural bowl, surrounded on 3 sides by hostile forces who controlled the high ground. Visibility was near zero. The enemy believed that distance exceeding 2,000 meters, combined with swirling winds and sub-zero temperatures, made them untouchable. They had never heard her call sign, the silent sniper. 48 hours ago, this had been a routine NATO joint winter warfare exercise along the Canadian border, a chance for Allied forces to test cold weather tactics against a skilled opposing force. Standard operating procedure, controlled environment, no live ammunition. Then everything changed. Emberly shifted her weight by millimeters, a movement so subtle it wouldn't disturb a single snowflake resting on her ghillie suit. Her spotter corporal, Brennan Hayes, lay 3 meters to her left, equally invisible beneath his own white shroud. They had crawled into position 21 hours ago, moving at a rate of 5 meters per hour through 200 meters of deep snow. Any faster and they would have created disturbances visible to thermal imaging. Now they were locked in place. Moving meant abandoning the shot geometry they'd spent nearly a full day establishing. Through her scope, the world became a grainy theater of whites and grays. The snowfall wasn't just heavy, it was tactical. Each flake disrupted the air currents, creating microturbulence that would deflect a bullet's path in ways no ballistic computer could fully predict. Brennan's voice came through the team channel barely above a whisper. Range to hostile command post is a 2,340 meters. Wind varying between 8 and 14 knots northwest to north-northwest. Temperature -18 Celsius and dropping. Emberly didn't respond immediately. She was studying the terrain between her position and the target zone. The forest floor rose and fell in irregular waves, creating thermal layers where cold air pooled in valleys and warmer currents rose along ridgelines. Each layer would bend her bullet's trajectory in different directions. The radio crackled in her earpiece. A different voice this time, Captain Vincent Cross, commander of the trapped platoon. His normally steady baritone carried an edge she'd never heard before. Overwatch, this is Atlas 1. We have confirmed hostile positions on Ridge 47. They've got the high ground and they're moving up mortars. We're boxed in. Vincent Cross was a 15-year veteran who never sounded rattled. Until now. Emberly keyed her mic once, acknowledged. Then she went back to watching. The forest held its breath around her. Above, the storm intensified. Below, in that natural bowl 3 kilometers away, 43 Marines prepared for what might be their last stand. And somewhere on Ridge 47, an enemy commander was making calculations of his own. The human body begins to fail at -18 degrees Celsius. Emberly knew the physiology intimately. First the extremities, fingers and toes going numb as blood retreated to protect the core. Then fine motor control, degrading, making precise movements nearly impossible. Eventually cognitive function declining as the brain struggled to maintain operations in hostile temperatures. She'd been fighting all 3 for the better part of a day. Her ghillie suit was engineered for winter operations, layered with thermal reflective materials that trapped body heat while maintaining a visual profile that blended with snow-covered terrain. But no equipment could fully protect against prolonged exposure. She'd managed hypothermia twice already through controlled breathing and micro-movements designed to maintain circulation without creating detectable motion. The scope presented its own challenges. Condensation from her breath froze on the lens surfaces, requiring constant, meticulous clearing. She used a small brush specially designed for Arctic operations, sweeping away ice crystals with movements so gentle they wouldn't disturb her position or alert thermal imaging systems to her presence. Brennan had cycled through his own challenges. As spotter, his job was to maintain situational awareness, monitor wind conditions, calculate ballistic solutions, and serve as her backup if she became incapacitated. He'd been eating high-calorie rations at carefully timed intervals, maintaining his core temperature through controlled metabolism. They'd developed a communication system that required no words. 2 clicks on the team radio meant wind shift. 3 clicks meant visibility change. A single sustained click meant immediate threat. Through her scope, Emberly watched the enemy forces with professional detachment. They were well-trained, disciplined. Their movements suggested special operations background, probably Spetsnaz or equivalent. They'd chosen their ambush site with expertise, using the natural bowl to channel 1st Platoon into a kill zone where superior numbers and firepower would overwhelm any defense. The mortar crews were nearly ready. She could see them adjusting their tubes, preparing firing data. Once they opened up, 1st Platoon would have perhaps 90 seconds before the first rounds impacted. After that, it would be systematic destruction. The radio crackled again. Overwatch Atlas 1, we have casualties. 1 urgent surgical, 2 priority. Request immediate close air support. Emberly kept her mic keyed off. She knew the answer before it came. Morrison's voice, Lieutenant Colonel Frank Morrison, the exercise commander, cut through from the Tactical Operations Center. Atlas 1 negative on CAS. Weather has grounded all aviation assets. You're on your own until the storm breaks. She heard Cross curse, then steady himself. Copy that. We'll hold as long as we can. Brennan shifted beside her, a movement she felt rather than saw. He was adjusting his rangefinder, compensating for new atmospheric data. Wind's backing, he whispered. Now northwest at 12 knots steady. Temperature dropped another 2 degrees. Snow intensity increasing. Worse conditions. The ballistic window was closing. But Emberly had learned something during her years as a sniper. Something her father had tried to teach her before Afghanistan took him. Something Master Gunnery Sergeant Silas Caldwell had reinforced through 2 years of brutal training. Patience is the sniper's truest weapon, not the rifle, not the scope, not even the bullet. Patience, the ability to wait when every instinct screamed to act, the discipline to remain still when movement felt like survival, the wisdom to recognize that the perfect moment was worth any amount of discomfort. Her father's words echoed through her mind, as clear as if he were lying beside her in the snow. In chaos, stillness owns the battlefield. Colonel Garrett Thorne had written those words in a letter from Afghanistan 3 weeks before an IED turned his convoy into twisted metal and fire. Emberly had been 14 years old, already planning to follow in his footsteps. The letter had arrived 2 days after the funeral. She'd read it 10,000 times since. Now, lying in a Montana blizzard with 43 lives depending on her accuracy, those words felt less like philosophy and more like prophecy. 6 months ago, Emberly had been standing in an auditorium at Camp Lejeune surrounded by skeptical faces. The integration briefing for female Marines in reconnaissance had been professional, clinical, bureaucratic. The kind of meeting where everyone said the right things while thinking entirely different thoughts. Marine Recon doesn't need special accommodations, one instructor had said. He hadn't been hostile, just stating what he believed was fact. The standards are the standards. Gender doesn't change physics. Emberly had agreed completely. She didn't want accommodations. She wanted the same brutal training that had forged every recon Marine before her. The cold weather phase had nearly broken her. Not the physical challenges. She'd grown up in northern Montana, comfortable with sub-zero temperatures since childhood. It was the psychological isolation. Lying motionless in freezing conditions for days, watching targets through a scope while her body screamed for movement, for warmth, for anything except the terrible stillness. Master Gunnery Sergeant Silas Caldwell had been her primary instructor. A legend in the sniper community with confirmed kills across 7 decades of service, Korea Cold War operations, Gulf War, Afghanistan, Iraq. At 68, he still moved with surprising agility and shot with mechanical precision that defied his age. He never showed favoritism, never lowered standards, but he'd recognized something in her approach. Most snipers are hunters, he'd told her during a night navigation exercise in the Appalachian Highlands. They want the chase, the tracking, the moment of triumph. You're different. You understand that waiting is the weapon. She'd proven it during her qualification exercise. While other candidates had rushed their shots, eager to demonstrate proficiency, Emberly had spent 16 hours in position for a single 1,600-meter shot in crosswinds gusting to 25 knots. She'd waited for the 30-second window when the wind momentarily aligned with the terrain, giving her a clear ballistic path. 1 shot, 1 kill. Perfect. Caldwell had approached her position after the exercise ended, his weathered face showing something that might have been approval. Your father would be proud, he'd said quietly. That was when Emberly learned that Silas Caldwell wasn't just any instructor. He'd served with Colonel Garrett Thorne during joint operations in Afghanistan 2008. They'd been friends, brothers in everything but blood. Caldwell had been there when the IED exploded, had helped carry what remained of Garrett Thorne to the medevac helicopter, had stood at attention during the funeral while a 14-year-old girl tried not to cry. Now he was teaching that same girl everything he knew about the art of remaining invisible. The nickname started after the qualification exercise. Silent Sniper. Not because she rarely spoke, though that was true, but because her presence on the battlefield was absence. She left no trace, made no sound, existed only in the moment the bullet arrived. Her father would have understood. Colonel Garrett Thorne had written extensively about the discipline of patience, the power of stillness. His letters from deployment read like tactical philosophy mixed with fatherly advice. In Chaos, he'd written, "The person who can remain calm owns the battlefield. Everyone else is just reacting. You want to be the actor, not the reactor. You want to be the eye of the storm while everyone else spins in the wind." Emberly had joined the Marines 2 days after her 18th birthday, carrying those letters like sacred texts. Now, 5 years later, she was lying in a snowstorm with a rifle Silas Caldwell had given her, the same rifle he'd carried through Korea, through the Cold War, through every conflict that had defined his generation. "Carried this in chosen reservoir," he'd said when he handed it to her at graduation, "through firefights that would make your training look like summer camp. Your father saved my life in Helmand Province with skills I taught him. Now I'm teaching you. This rifle's been in my family since Korea. Now it's yours. Make history with it." The weight of that legacy pressed against her shoulder now, as real as the cold as present as the scope against her eye. The radio exploded with static. "Overwatch Atlas 1, Cross's voice carried new urgency. "They're moving up. Mortar crews are in position. We've got maybe 15 minutes before they can range us." 15 minutes. Emberly zoomed her scope to maximum magnification. Through the swirling snow, she caught glimpses of movement on Ridge 47. Figures in winter camouflage moving with practiced efficiency, setting up crew-served weapons, coordinating fields of fire, and there a single figure standing apart from the others. Taller, directing, the command element. "Brennan," she whispered, "I have possible high-value target at grid reference, November 742. Her spotter consulted his rangefinder and terrain map. Confirmed. "That's their tactical operations center. Looks like they're running the whole encirclement from that position." Emberly's mind raced through the calculations she'd been running for 19 hours, over 2,000 meters. Heavy snowfall creating both visual and atmospheric interference. Wind shear between multiple altitude bands. Temperature cold enough to affect powder burn rates and air density. The radio crackled again, Morrison's voice carefully neutral. "Overwatch Command. What's your assessment? Can you make the shot?" Standard Doctrine said no. The Marine Corps Scout Sniper School taught engagement ranges out to 1,000 meters as maximum effective distance under ideal conditions. This was more than double that distance under the worst possible conditions imaginable. Through her scope, she watched the enemy commander gesture to his subordinates. They were preparing for the final assault. Once those mortars were in position, 1st Platoon would be systematically destroyed. Emberly felt her heartbeat slow, a trained response to stress. She'd learned this in sniper school. The deliberate control of autonomic functions. Slower heartbeat meant steadier aim. Controlled breathing meant consistent oxygen to the brain, preventing the tunnel vision that often afflicted shooters under pressure. She thought about her father, about Silas Caldwell, about 43 Marines who were running out of time. "Command, Overwatch." Her voice was steady, professional, carrying none of the uncertainty churning in her gut. "I can make the shot. Request clearance to engage." 3 seconds of silence stretched like hours. Then Overwatch, "You are cleared hot. Take the shot when ready." Emberly settled deeper into her position. 19 hours of waiting had led to this moment. But then Morrison's voice cut through again, carrying new information that changed everything. "Overwatch, be advised. Intelligence has updated assessment of opposing force. We have confirmed intercepts indicating foreign military advisors embedded with OP4 elements. Repeat, this is no longer a training exercise. You are weapons-free for live engagement." Brennan's head snapped toward her, eyes wide behind a scope. The exercise had gone live. What had started as NATO winter warfare training had somehow become an actual foreign incursion on American soil. The opposing force wasn't playing war games anymore. They were conducting real operations. "Overwatch Command. Do you copy?" Emberly's finger moved to the transmit button, but she paused. Through her scope, she watched the enemy commander. His movements were too professional, his positioning too tactical. This wasn't an American soldier playing enemy. This was someone who'd done this for real many times before. "Command, Overwatch copies all. Confirm authorization for live fire engagement." "Affirmative, Arisht. Rules of engagement are now unrestricted. Treat as hostile combatant. Atlas 1 survival is priority 1. The blizzard intensified around her. Somewhere in the storm, her father's ghost whispered about chaos and stillness, about the moment when training became reality, about the weight of taking a human life. Emberly had never killed anyone before. She'd shot thousands of targets, paper silhouettes, steel plates, training mannequins. She'd graduated top of her class in marksmanship fieldcraft observation. She knew the mechanics of death in exquisite technical detail, but she'd never looked through a scope at a living human being and made the conscious decision to end their existence. "Brennan," she whispered. Updated intelligence on the target. Her spotter was already pulling up classified feeds on his ruggedized tablet. His face went pale. "Boss, you're not going to believe this." He turned the screen toward her. A dossier photo stared back same figure she'd been watching through her scope. But the caption made her blood run cold. Colonel Dmitry Volkov, Russian Federation Spetsnaz. Confirmed kills 134. Active service 31 years. Specialization Arctic warfare, long-range engagement, unconventional operations. One of the most lethal snipers in Russian military history, and he was on American soil directing an operation against United States Marines. "Command Overwatch." Emberly's voice remained steady even as her heart rate spiked. "Can you confirm identity of hostile commander?" Morrison's response came after a pause that suggested frantic consultation with intelligence officers. "Overwatch confirmed. Target is Colonel Dmitry Volkov, Russian Spetsnaz. How that bastard ended up embedded in a NATO training exercise is above my pay grade. But he's there and he's directing hostile operations against our people. You are authorized to engage with extreme prejudice." Extreme prejudice. Military euphemism for kill him. Emberly felt the weight of her rifle settle against her shoulder. Felt the cold metal of the trigger guard through her glove. Felt 19 hours of waiting compress into this single moment. Somewhere in a tactical operations center, Silas Caldwell would be watching satellite feeds, monitoring her vital signs through biometric sensors, calculating the same ballistics she was processing. She imagined his voice calm, steady, the voice that had guided her through 2 years of training. Emberly Volkov is Soviet-era legend. He's trained the generation that trained today's Spetsnaz. You're facing a ghost from the Cold War. But here's what he doesn't know: you've got everything you need. You've got the patience, you've got the skill. You've got your father's blood and my training. Most importantly, you've got 43 reasons to make this shot. Don't think about Volkov's reputation. Think about those Marines. Think about going home and knowing you did everything you could. Breathe, wait, execute. As if summoned by her thoughts, the radio crackled. "Overwatch Caldwell." The old Master Sergeant's voice carried across encrypted channels from the TOC. "I know what you're thinking. I know this is your first live engagement. But you've done this shot 10,000 times in training. The target doesn't know you're there. He doesn't know what's coming. That's your advantage. Trust your training. Trust yourself. Your father trusted me to teach you right. I trust you to prove him right." Emberly blinked away, the moisture gathering in her eyes. Not tears, just the natural response to wind and cold and stress. "Copy, Gunny," she whispered. "I've got this." Through her scope, she studied Dmitry Volkov with new understanding. This wasn't just an enemy commander. This was a legend, a master. Someone who'd survived 3 decades of the most dangerous profession in military service. Someone who was about to learn that legends could be ended by Marines with patience and precision. The mathematics of ultra-long-range shooting are unforgiving. Brennan pulled up the ballistic data on his tablet, displaying numbers that told a story of compounding difficulties. At 2,340 meters, her .338 Lapua Magnum round would be in flight for approximately 3.2 seconds. During that time, it would drop over 40 meters from the bore axis, traveling through multiple atmospheric layers with varying density, temperature, and wind velocity. The Coriolis effect, the Earth's rotation, would deflect the bullet approximately 8 centimeters to the right. Normally negligible, but at this distance, 8 centimeters was the difference between a center mass hit and a complete miss. Spin drift from the rifling would add another 4 centimeters of deviation. And then there was the wind, the primary enemy. Brennan had identified at least 4 distinct wind layers between their position and Ridge 47. Ground-level winds at 12 knots northwest. Mid-level winds at 8 knots north. Upper atmosphere winds at 15 knots northeast. Each layer would push the bullet in different directions, creating a 3-dimensional puzzle that had to be solved simultaneously. Standard ballistic computers can't handle this, Brennan muttered, his voice tight with frustration. Too many variables changing too fast. Emberly knew he was right. The software they carried was designed for shots out to 1,500 meters in stable conditions. Beyond that, it became educated guesswork, which meant she had to become the computer. Her mind assembled the data into an intuitive model. She visualized the bullet's path as a ribbon through space, bending and curving as invisible forces acted upon it. She'd done this thousands of times in training, building a neural map of how projectiles behaved in the real world versus theoretical models. Overwatch command, I need realistic assessment. What's your probability of success? Morrison wasn't doubting her skill. He was doing his job, making command decisions based on realistic assessments. Honest answer, maybe 15%. The shot was at the absolute edge of possibility, even for an expert marksman under ideal conditions. In a blizzard with multiple environmental complications, the odds dropped into single digits. But Emberly had learned something during her years as a sniper. Statistics were for planners. Shooters dealt in absolutes. Either the bullet went where you aimed it or it didn't. So conventional probability is 15 to 20%. But I'm not planning a conventional shot. I'm waiting for perfect convergence, all variables aligning for approximately 5 seconds. When that happens, probability goes to 90%. And if that convergence doesn't occur, then first platoon extracts under covering fire, and we accept the casualties. She kept her voice flat professional. Emotion had no place in tactical decisions. Morrison's response came after a long pause. Copy that, Overwatch. You have command authority to take the shot when ready, but Gunny, don't wait forever. We're running out of time. 23 minutes later, Emberly felt the forest change. It was subtle, a slight decrease in snow intensity, a momentary steadying of the wind. The kind of shift that most people would never notice, but that snipers learn to sense like a sixth sense. Nature always gives patterns. You just have to be patient enough to find them. Brennan felt it too. Wind stabilizing, northwest at 11 knots, holding steady, snow density dropping to 70%. Emberly checked her scope. The enemy commander, Colonel Dmitry Volkov, legend of the Russian Spetsnaz, was visible again. He stood in profile approximately 1.9 meters tall, presenting a target zone roughly 45 centimeters wide. At 2,340 meters, that zone represented an angular measurement of less than 1 minute of angle, smaller than the mechanical precision of most rifle systems, but not smaller than her capability. She made her final adjustments. Elevation set to compensate for the 40-meter drop. Windage adjusted for the cumulative effect of multiple wind layers calculated using Brennan's atmospheric model and her own intuitive corrections. A slight additional hold to account for Coriolis and spin drift. Her breathing slowed to 6 breaths per minute, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Each exhale timed to her heartbeat. Range confirmed at 2340, Brennan whispered. Wind holding steady. You have a firing window opening in 3, 2, 1, now. Emberly's world contracted to a circle 7 meters wide, 2,340 meters away. Volkov turned, presenting a full frontal aspect. 3 seconds of perfect positioning. She felt her heartbeat, 72 beats per minute, steady, predictable. Inhale, hold, natural respiratory pause. The crosshairs settled on center mass. Everything she'd learned, every hour of training, every round fired in practice, but all of it compressed into this single moment. Her father's letters, Caldwell's lessons, 19 hours of waiting in the snow, 43 Marines depending on her. The trigger broke clean, a perfect surprise release exactly as she'd practiced 10,000 times. The rifle recoiled into her shoulder with familiar force. Through the scope, she watched the bullet's trace. A slight shimmer in the air, visible only because she knew exactly where to look. 2.8 seconds. The round traveled through the first wind layer, drifting 3 centimeters right. Through the second layer, pushed another 2 centimeters. The third layer compensated, bringing it back towards centerline. Final layer. The bullet dropped below the storm's main turbulence, entering calmer air for the last 200 meters. 3.2 seconds. Colonel Dmitry Volkov's head snapped back. He collapsed immediately. No drama, no theatrics, just the sudden transition from alive to dead that characterized all successful sniper engagements. For a moment, nothing happened. The enemy forces didn't immediately realize what had occurred. Their commander had simply dropped, possibly from a heart attack or stroke. They rushed to his position, surrounding the body. Then someone noticed the entry wound, understood what it meant. Panic rippled through their ranks. The radio exploded with chatter. Overwatch Atlas 1. We just saw the commander go down. What the hell did you shoot him with? Emberly was already cycling, her bolt chambering a fresh round, training overriding emotion. Stay in the fight until the fight is over. Atlas 1 confirmed kill on hostile command element. Recommend you execute breakout maneuver now while they're disorganized. She didn't wait for acknowledgement. Through her scope, she watched the enemy forces fragmenting. Without Volkov, the careful coordination collapsed. Different elements started making independent decisions, breaking the unified tactical front. Brennan was staring at her, his expression caught between awe and disbelief. Do you realize what you just did 2340 meters? In a blizzard. First shot, first kill. That's... He trailed off, searching for words. Emberly didn't answer. He didn't. She was tracking new targets, identifying any enemy personnel who might try to restore command and control. 2,340 meters. A record, certainly, but records were just numbers. What mattered was that 1st Platoon was moving now, executing their breakout under covering fire from their own weapons teams. She could see them through her scope, small figures moving through the snow, carrying their wounded, maintaining fire discipline. They were going to make it. Overwatch, all Atlas elements are mobile. We're clear of the kill zone. Emberly allowed herself one slow breath of satisfaction. Then the forest exploded with incoming fire. The first round snapped overhead like bullwhips cracking in frozen air. Supersonic rounds tore through the air above her position, the sharp reports of distant rifles echoing seconds later across the valley. The enemy had triangulated her location. Not from the shot itself, the suppressor and distance made that nearly impossible, but from the ballistic trajectory, analyzing the angle of Volkov's fatal wound and calculating backwards to determine a general area of origin. Now they were saturating that area with fire. Brennan, we need to displace now. They'd rehearsed this scenario 100 times. Emergency extraction from a compromised position. The key was moving perpendicular to the enemy's line of sight, breaking their targeting solution while minimizing exposure. Emberly rolled left in a smooth rotation that kept her profile below the terrain crest. Brennan moved simultaneously in the opposite direction. Each carried their essential equipment, rifle ammunition, communications gear. Everything else was expendable, including the carefully constructed hide site they'd occupied for 19 hours. The snow was both ally and enemy. It concealed their movement, but also slowed them down, creating drag that turned each meter into an exhausting struggle. Behind them, the heavy thump of mortar tubes echoed through the valley. Incoming, Brennan shouted. Emberly pressed herself into a shallow depression, covering her head with her arms. The mortar rounds impacted 50 meters behind their previous position, throwing up geysers of snow and frozen earth. Close. Too close. She low-crawled forward using a technique learned in Scout Sniper School move during chaos freeze during silence. The enemy would be watching for motion, but the explosions created visual noise that masked small movements. 20 meters. 30. The distance between them and immediate danger growing with each painful advance. Her shoulder caught on something, a fallen branch concealed beneath the snow. She twisted to clear it, felt the branch snap with a sound that seemed impossibly loud in the momentary quiet between explosions. Rifle fire immediately converged on her position. Emberly rolled into a small ravine, landing hard on her right shoulder. Pain flared sharp and immediate. She bit down on a curse, checking her gear. The rifle was intact, scope undamaged. Brennan slid into the ravine beside her, breathing hard. They've got a hunter-killer team moving up, he gasped. I counted at least 8, probably 9. Spetsnaz trained based on their movement patterns. 9 operators in winter forest hunting 2 Marines. Not favorable odds, but Emberly had trained for this exact scenario. The hunter becoming the hunted. How to evade, survive, and counterattack when outnumbered. We need to split up, she said, her tactical mind already calculating angles and probabilities. They'll expect us to stay together. If we separate, we divide their focus. Brennan nodded, understanding the logic even as he recognized the danger. Alone in a blizzard while being hunted was close to a death sentence. Rally point, he asked. Emberly consulted her map, identifying a terrain feature 2 kilometers south. The frozen creek bed, 3 hours from now. 3 hours. Brennan managed a tight smile. Try not to break any more records before then. They separated, moving in different directions through the snow. Brennan headed south, deliberately choosing the easier route to draw pursuit. Emberly went north, taking the harder terrain, steep slopes, dense forest areas where tracking would be difficult. She was betting the hunter-killer team would split. Some would take the logical path after Brennan. Others would pursue her through the harder route. She was also betting they'd never encountered anyone like her before. Within moments, she vanished into the white wilderness, leaving no trace but wind-erased footprints and silence. The temperature had dropped to negative 24 degrees Celsius. Emberly moved through the forest like water, finding its level, taking paths of least resistance while maintaining a southern heading toward the rally point. And her shoulder throbbed where she'd landed on it during the mortar attack, but the injury was manageable. No broken bones, just deep tissue bruising that would heal given time. Time she might not have. Behind her, she could hear the pursuit team, They were good maintaining tactical spacing while moving through difficult terrain. But they made noise, the unavoidable sounds of multiple people moving through winter forest, snapping branches, disturbed snow falling from overhead tree limbs, the whisper of equipment rubbing against fabric. She made none of these sounds. Master Gunnery Sergeant Silas Caldwell had taught her the fundamental truth of fieldcraft 2 years ago during cold weather training in the Montana mountains. The memory surfaced with crystalline clarity. She'd been struggling with a movement exercise, frustrated by her inability to cross a frozen meadow without leaving traces. Caldwell had found her after the exercise ended, sitting alone in the cold. "You're fighting the environment," he'd said, settling onto a log beside her. "That's your mistake. Cold is a weapon. Most people fight it. You need to use it." "I don't understand, Gunny." Caldwell had gestured at the frozen landscape around them. "In Korea, winter of 1950, I was part of the retreat from Chosin Reservoir. -40 degrees, Chinese forces everywhere. Most of our guys were trying to stay warm, burning calories just to survive. But I learned something watching the ones who made it out." He'd paused, his weathered face distant with memory. "The survivors let the cold work for them. They slowed their metabolism, reduced heat signatures until thermal imaging couldn't find them. They let the ground freeze solid so their footprints didn't leave compression marks. They used acoustic dampening from the cold air to absorb sounds that would carry in warmer weather." "You became the winter instead of fighting it," Emberly had said slowly. "Exactly. Your father understood that concept better than anyone I ever served with." Afghanistan 2008. We were operating in the Hindu Kush Mountains, high altitude, brutal conditions. Everyone else was focused on staying alive. Your father was focused on using the environment as a weapon. Caldwell had pulled out a photograph, then creased and worn from years of carrying. Two men in winter gear, younger versions of themselves, standing against a backdrop of snow-covered peaks. Bagram Air Base, January 2008. Your father and me 2 weeks before the operation where he saved my life. Emberly had stared at the photo. Her father looked impossibly young, barely older than she was now. But his eyes carried the same intensity she remembered from childhood. "What happened?" she'd asked quietly. "Taliban ambush. We were pinned down in a valley taking fire from 3 directions. Your father spent 6 hours in the snow, didn't move, didn't make a sound, just waited for the perfect moment. When it came, he took out their machine gun team with 3 shots. Saved my entire squad." Caldwell had put the photo away carefully. "He talked about you constantly, showed me your letters, said you were going to be something special, said you had the patience gene, just like him." "I just want to make him proud," Emberly had whispered. "You already have, kid. Now you just need to prove it to the world." That conversation had been the turning point. After that night, Emberly stopped fighting the cold and started using it. Her performance in cold weather operations improved dramatically. By graduation, she'd become the best in her class at Arctic Fieldcraft. Now, 2 years later, those lessons were keeping her alive. Emberly found a position on a slight rise overlooking her back trail. She settled behind a fallen log, using the natural terrain to break up her outline. Through her rifle scope, she watched the pursuit team emerge from the tree line. 6 operators, moving in a tactical diamond formation. Professional spacing, excellent discipline. They were checking terrain features, methodically looking for signs of her passage. The team leader held up a fist. Everyone froze. He'd found something, probably the ravine where she and Brennan had separated. Now he was making a decision. Split his team to follow both trails or concentrate force on one target. Emberly watched him signal. 3 operators peeled off, heading south after Brennan. 3 continued north, pursuing her, a good tactical decision. Divided force increased chance of contact while maintaining local superiority at each engagement. She waited until they were within 500 meters, then shifted position, a slow, deliberate movement that took her deeper into the forest, maintaining the gap between hunter and prey. Her radio chirped softly. "Atlas 1's frequency. Overwatch Atlas 1. We're clear of the engagement zone and moving to extraction point. What's your status?" Emberly keyed the mic once, unable to speak, then 3 times under duress. "Copy that. Can you make it to extract?" 2 clicks. Negative, a pause. Then Captain Cross's voice, carefully controlled. "Overwatch, we're coming back for you." 1 click sustained. "Absolutely not." "Gunny, we don't leave people behind." Emberly broke radio silence, whispering into her mic. "Atlas 1, you have wounded who need immediate medical attention. Continue to extraction. That's an order." She was pulling rank, something she rarely did, but Cross needed to understand this wasn't negotiable. A long silence, then, "Understood, Overwatch. But when you make it out first, beers are on me." when not if. She appreciated the optimism. Emberly checked her ammunition. 43 rounds remaining. Enough for a sustained engagement if it came to that. Behind her, the three-man pursuit team was closing distance. She adjusted her position, settling into a small depression that provided both cover and concealment. 2 hours and 17 minutes until the rally point. The forest darkened as the storm intensified. Snow fell heavier now, reducing visibility to less than 100 meters. Emberly became part of the landscape. Invisible. Waiting. 40 minutes passed in absolute silence. The first indication came as a feeling more than anything concrete. Emberly had been watching her back trail, tracking the three-man pursuit team's progress through the forest. They were methodical, professional, taking no unnecessary risks. Then they stopped. Not a tactical pause. A full halt. The three operators took cover positions and went completely still. Someone had told them to stop. Someone who'd spotted something they'd missed. Emberly felt her pulse quicken. They'd brought their own sniper. She scanned the terrain behind the pursuit team, looking for telltale signs of a concealed shooter. Nothing obvious, no glint of optics, no disturbance in the snow pattern, no thermal signature, which meant she was dealing with someone at her level. The blizzard had intensified again, reducing visibility to less than 300 meters. Under normal circumstances, this would make counter-sniper operations nearly impossible. But it also created opportunities for those patient enough to exploit them. Emberly shifted her position by increments, moving behind the log to a new firing angle. If the enemy sniper had marked her previous location, she was no longer there. Through her scope, she studied the forest systematically, not looking for a person, looking for geometry that didn't belong. Straight lines in nature's curves. Right angles where everything should be organic. Patterns that human presence created unconsciously. There. 700 meters distant, slightly elevated. A shape that was almost natural but not quite. A small mound of snow that could be a drift or could be a camouflage position. Emberly watched it for 15 minutes. No movement. No giveaway. Then the sun broke through the clouds for 30 seconds, a rare gap in the storm. Light reflected off something metallic. Just a flash, instantly gone. A scope lens. The enemy sniper had good position, commanding view of the terrain. But he was backlit now, silhouetted against the brighter sky behind the ridge. Disadvantage for him, advantage for her. She made minor adjustments to her scope, accounting for the 700-meter distance and the crosswind that had picked up as the sun appeared. This shot was well within her capability, even in poor conditions. The challenge was that the moment she fired, she revealed her position. The enemy sniper would immediately return fire, and at this range, the engagement would be decided in seconds. Emberly controlled her breathing, letting her heart rate drop. She'd done this countless times in training, the quick engagement against an aware, capable opponent. It came down to who shot first and who shot true. Through her scope, she saw movement. The enemy sniper adjusting position, probably doing his own calculations. She placed her crosshairs on the center of his mass, what she estimated to be his chest area beneath the camouflage. The wind steadied for 3 seconds. Emberly fired. The recoil was familiar, comforting. She cycled the bolt immediately, keeping her scope on target. 700 meters distant, the enemy sniper jerked backward, then went still. No return fire. Emberly remained in position for 2 full minutes, watching for any reaction from the three-man pursuit team. They'd heard the shot but couldn't immediately locate its origin in the acoustic chaos of the storm. Then they started moving toward their fallen teammate's position, abandoning their pursuit of her to check on him. Emberly used the opportunity to displace, moving quickly now that she'd broken contact. She headed south, angling toward the rally point where Brennan should be waiting. The blizzard closed in around her again, erasing her tracks almost as quickly as she made them. She'd just eliminated a peer-level threat, something that happened rarely even in high-intensity combat. The enemy sniper had been skilled, well-positioned, equipped with excellent optics. But he'd made one mistake. He'd tried to hunt someone who'd spent 5 years learning to be invisible. 30 minutes later, Emberly's radio crackled with unexpected traffic. Not from Morrison, or Cross, or Caldwell. A different voice, heavily accented English, male, older. American woman sniper. She froze mid-step, her blood turning colder than the air around her. "You have wounded my pride. In my country, women do not play soldier. I will teach you why God made men warriors." The voice was cold, measured, carrying the weight of absolute conviction. Colonel Dmitry Volkov, the man she'd shot through the head at 2,340 meters. The man who should be dead. "You think you killed me, yes. Good shot. Very good shot. But you aimed for center mass through my head. Bullet grazed skull. Much bleeding, much pain. But Volkov does not die so easily. Emberly's hands shook as she keyed her mic. Command Overwatch. Confirm status of target Alpha. Morrison's response came after a pause filled with frantic background chatter. Overwatch. We have updated intelligence. Medical team reported Volkov wounded but stabilized. Repeat, target Alpha is combat effective and has assumed direct command of hunter-killer operation. Her perfect shot. 2,340 meters through a blizzard. The shot that should have ended everything. She'd grazed him. Volkov's voice continued broadcasting on multiple frequencies to ensure she heard. I have 8 men with me now, all Spetsnaz, all loyal. We will find you, American woman. We will show you what happens when children play war games with men. The gendered attack hit harder than she expected, not because it was true she knew her capabilities, but because it touched the exact doubt she'd been fighting since joining Recon. Am I really good enough? Or am I just a diversity checkbox? Don't let him in your head. Ember. Caldwell's voice cut through on their secure frequency, calm and steady as always. He's trying to rattle you. Classic psychological warfare. You're not a child playing games. You're a United States Marine who just made the longest confirmed kill shot in Corps history. You saved 43 lives. His ego is wounded worse than his skull. Stay frosty. Emberly took a slow breath, forcing her hands to steady. Copy, Gunny. But Volkov wasn't finished. Your father, I know of him. Colonel Garrett Thorne, yes, Army Special Forces, died in Afghanistan 2009. IED and convoy. Very sad. Emberly's finger tightened on her rifle grip. I was there, you know. Not at his death, but before we met once, your father and I. Afghanistan 2008. Different sides of same war. She shouldn't engage. Shouldn't give him the satisfaction. But the words came anyway. You're lying. Your father was operating in Hindu Kush Mountains. January 2008, I was advisor to Taliban forces. We had him in our sights. He was pinned in valley with his squad. Emberly's world tilted. But he escaped. Very skilled operator, your father. Patient, disciplined. He waited 6 hours in snow, then killed our machine gun team with 3 shots. Saved his entire squad. That was the exact story Caldwell had told her. The exact operation. Details that shouldn't be public knowledge. How do you know this? She whispered. Because I was there. I was young lieutenant, then learning trade. Your father had me in his sights. Perfect shot. But he did not take it. He chose mercy. Fired around my position, instead giving warning to retreat. I survived because of his choice. Volkov's voice carried something new now, not mockery, something else. 3 weeks later, I heard he died. IED. I never forgot the American who could have killed me but chose not to. I have thought about him many times over the years. The words hit Emberly like physical blows. Her father had spared Volkov, the same man now hunting her through Montana wilderness. Now I find his daughter, trained by same man who trained him, fighting with same patience, same discipline. It is poetic, yes. What do you want? Emberly demanded. I want to finish what your father started. He spared me out of mercy. I dishonored his memory with my words about women soldiers. I spoke from wounded pride. This is not about gender. This is about warriors. A pause. Wind howled through the trees. You and me, Emberly Thorne. One warrior to another. Your father's daughter against the man he spared. We settle this properly. No more hunting, no more teams, just us. You have 8 men with you, Emberly pointed out. Not anymore. I have ordered them to secure rally point and wait. This is personal matter now. 1 sniper, 1 spotter. You have the same. Equal terms. It was a trap. Had to be. But Volkov's voice carried something that sounded almost like respect. Your father showed me mercy when I was young and foolish. I forgot that lesson over the years. Became arrogant. Your shot at 2,300 meters reminded me there is always someone better, always someone faster. You have earned respect, Emberly Thorne. Now we fight as equals. Caldwell's voice cut through again, urgent now. Ember, do not engage with him. This is textbook manipulation. He's trying to draw you into... Gunny. Emberly's voice was steady. He knew my father. He was there. The details match everything you told me. A long silence. I know, Caldwell said quietly. I've been pulling classified reports while you talked. Intelligence confirms Volkov was operating as advisor in that region that time frame. It's possible he's telling the truth. Then I need to finish this. Negative. You need to get to rally point, link up with Brennan, and extract. We can send. He has Brennan's position, Emberly interrupted. You said they're securing the rally point. That's where Brennan is heading. The implication hung in the frozen air. If she ran, Brennan would walk into a trap. If she engaged Volkov alone, she at least had a chance. Ember. Gunny, you taught me never to leave a Marine behind. Brennan's my brother. I'm not abandoning him. Another long silence. She could almost see Caldwell in the TOC weighing options, calculating probabilities. Finally, then make every shot count. Your father would be proud. Semper Fi Marine. Emberly keyed the open frequency. Volkov, you want a fair fight. One sniper, one spotter, equal terms. This is correct. Then tell your men to pull back from the creek bed. That's my rally point. My spotter is heading there. If anything happens to him, our deal is off. Agreed. My men will withdraw. You have my word as officer. The word of a man who could have warned my father about an ambush, but didn't. Volkov's response came after a pause. Fair point. I have much to atone for. Perhaps this is how I begin. Your spotter will not be harmed. You and I will settle our business 400 meters from Rally Point. Northridge Overlook. 1 hour from now. How do I know you'll honor the terms? You don't, just as your father did not know if I would fire on him when he spared my life. He trusted in warrior's honor anyway. I am asking same trust from his daughter. Will you grant what he granted? Emberly checked her position. The Northridge was 30 minutes away at a hard march. That gave her time to prepare. 1 hour, she confirmed. Just you and your spotter. Anyone else shows up, I disappear, and you never find me. Understood. 1 hour, Emberly Thorne. We will see if daughter has same skill as father. The radio went silent. Emberly stood in the forest snow, falling around her rifle heavy in her hands. Somewhere ahead, Volkov was preparing for their confrontation. Somewhere behind, Caldwell was watching satellite feeds and praying she'd survive. And somewhere in memory, her father's voice whispered about mercy and honor and the choices that defined warriors. She started moving toward the North Ridge. 1 hour until she faced the man her father had spared. 1 hour until she learned if mercy had been wisdom or fatal mistake. The forest held its breath as she disappeared into the white. The North Ridge rose through the storm like the spine of some ancient frozen beast. Emberly approached from the west using terrain features to mask her movement. Every step was calculated, every pause deliberate. The rendezvous with Volkov was 20 minutes away, but she needed to arrive early, scout the ground, identify advantages and escape routes. Never walk into a meeting without knowing all the exits. Another lesson from her father's letters. The ridge provided excellent vantage over the frozen creek bed where Brennan should be waiting. Through her scope, she could see the rally point 400 meters south. No movement. No signs of the Spetsnaz team Volkov claimed to have withdrawn. Either he was keeping his word, or this was the most elaborate ambush she'd ever walked into. Her radio crackled softly. Brennan's voice barely above a whisper. Overwatch, I'm in position at Rally Point. It's clear. No hostiles in sight. What's your status? Emberly keyed twice. Engaged. Maintain position. Copy. I've got good cover here. Frozen overhang concealment from thermal. I can hold for hours if needed. Good. At least one of them had a defensive position worth defending. Emberly found her spot on the ridge, a cluster of boulders that offered cover from multiple angles while providing clear sight lines to the north. She settled in, checking her rifle one more time. 41 rounds remaining. The scope was clean, the barrel cold but not frozen. Everything mechanically sound. Now came the hard part. Waiting to see if Volkov was a man of honor or a liar using her father's memory as bait. 15 minutes passed in silence, broken only by wind and her own controlled breathing. Then movement on the opposite ridgeline, 300 meters distant. Two figures emerged from the tree line. One tall and broad-shouldered despite his injuries. The other smaller, younger, carrying a rangefinder and tablet. Sniper and spotter. Equal terms as promised. Volkov raised one hand in a gesture that was neither friendly nor hostile. Simple acknowledgement. I see you. You see me. Let us begin. Emberly remained motionless, watching through her scope. Now that she could see him clearly, she noticed the bandage wrapped around his head, dark with dried blood. Her shot had carved a furrow along his skull close enough to knock him unconscious, not close enough to kill. An inch to the left, and he'd be dead. An inch to the right, and she'd have missed entirely. Even from this distance, she could see he moved stiffly, favoring his left side. The head wound had clearly affected his balance, his posture subtly compensating for lingering disorientation. A lesser man would still be in medical care. But Volkov was Spetsnaz, trained to function through injuries that would incapacitate normal soldiers. The margins of life and death measured in snowflakes and wind gusts. Volkov's voice came through her radio, calmer now, less theatrical than before. I am here as promised. No tricks, no ambush. My men are 2 kilometers south Whiffy waiting for my signal. Your spotter is safe. Now we talk, yes. Emberly keyed her mic. We talk, but I keep you in my crosshairs while we do. A sound that might have been a chuckle. I would expect nothing less. Your father would do the same. Tell me, Emberly. Thorne, do you know the full story of that day in Afghanistan? The day I met your father. Caldwell told me the basics. Ambush. You had his squad pinned. He waited 6 hours, then took out your machine gun team. True, but there is more. After he killed my gunners, he had clean shot on me. I was standing in open directing retreat, young and stupid and exposed. He could have ended me with one bullet. Through her scope, she saw Volkov touch the bandage on his head, a gesture that seemed unconscious. Instead, he fired 3 shots around my position, close enough that I felt the pressure wave, close enough that I understood the message. He was saying I could kill you, but I choose not to. Run, live, remember this mercy. The words hit Emberly like a physical blow. Every detail matched what Caldwell had told her. This wasn't speculation. Volkov had been there. I ran, Volkov continued. I survived, but I never understood why he spared me until years later when I had my own daughter. Then I understood. He saw a young man making mistakes, following orders, caught in machinery of war. He chose to let that young man live, learn, perhaps become better. Did you, Emberly asked quietly, become better? A long pause. Wind howled between the ridges. No, I became harder, more skilled, more dangerous. I forgot the lesson he tried to teach. I forgot that mercy is not weakness. It is the highest form of strength. Volkov shifted position and Emberly's finger tensed on the trigger. Easy, he said. Just adjusting my leg. Your shot earlier killed my sniper. Good shooting, by the way. Petrov was one of my best students. You honored him with clean death. I didn't shoot him to honor him. I shot him because he was hunting me. And he would have done the same. This is the way of warriors. But here is what you must know, Emberly Thorne. The reason I called this meeting. The reason I sent my men away. His voice dropped, carrying weight that transcended the radio's compression. I could have warned your father about the IED. I was still in region in 2009, still working with Taliban. I heard chatter about convoy ambush. I knew American Special Forces would be traveling that route. I could have passed intelligence through back channels. Could have saved his life. Emberly's world stopped. But I did not. I told myself it was operational security, that I could not reveal my sources, that politics and allegiance mattered more than one man's life. I let him die, Emberly. Your father showed me mercy, and I repaid him with silence. Through her scope, she saw Volkov's shoulders sag. I have carried this shame for 15 years. Every kill since then, I remember the man who spared me. Every mission, I wonder if I have become the monster he chose not to create. And now his daughter puts bullet through my skull, and I survive. It is, what is the word? Poetic justice, yes. Emberly's hands shook. Rage and grief and something else. Something that felt dangerously like understanding. You're telling me you killed my father. Not directly, but yes, my silence killed him. My cowardice killed him. And I have lived with that weight every day since. And now what? Emberly's voice was raw. You want absolution, forgiveness. You think I'm going to grant you peace because you're confessing? No, I want you to finish what you started. I want you to take the shot I deserve. Your father gave me life I did not earn. You give me death I have earned many times over. This is balance. This is justice. Emberly stared through her scope at the man who'd shaped her entire life without her knowing. The man her father had spared. The man who'd let her father die. Her finger rested on the trigger. 2 pounds of pressure. Maybe 3 seconds of bullet flight at this range. Then it would be over. Justice served. Debt paid. But her father's voice whispered in her memory. Taking a life is a burden. Do it only when it saves lives. Who would this save? Volkov wanted to die. Wanted her to be his executioner. Wanted the story to end with Garrett Thorne's daughter avenging him. But what would her father want? No, she said finally. Silence on the radio. Then, what? I said no, I'm not going to kill you, Volkov. Not like this. Not execution while you're standing there waiting for it. But I don't care what you deserve. My father showed you mercy because he believed in something bigger than revenge. He believed that even enemies could change. That even in war, there's room for honor. Emberly took a slow breath, steadying herself. You want atonement, then earn it. Go back to Russia. Retire. spend the rest of your life trying to be the man my father thought you could become. Don't waste his mercy by throwing your life away now." Another long silence. When Volkov spoke again, his voice carried something that might have been wonder. "You are truly his daughter. Same wisdom, same strength. I have faced hundreds of enemies. You are the first who defeats me with mercy instead of bullets." "I'm not letting you go out of mercy," Emberly corrected. "I'm letting you go because killing you won't bring my father back. And because I'm tired of death. I've taken enough lives today." She thought about the Spetsnaz operators she'd killed during the pursuit. Young men following orders just like Volkov had been in 2008. How many of them had families? How many had left behind daughters who would spend years wondering why their fathers never came home? "Your men," she said. "The ones I killed. Did they have families?" Petrov had wife and son. Fedorov had parents in Moscow. Dmitri was engaged to be married in the spring. Each name landed like a punch, not statistics, people. Lives she'd ended. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm sorry they died because of choices their commander made. They died as soldiers. They understood the risks. But yes, I am sorry too. Sorry I brought them to this place. Sorry I let pride in politics cloud my judgment." Volkov gestured to his spotter, who began packing their equipment. "We will leave now. I will honor the agreement. Your man at Rally Point will not be touched. My team will withdraw. This incident will be buried by both our government. Too many political complications if truth comes out." "One question before you go," Emberly said. "Why did you really call this meeting? You could have just withdrawn quietly." "Because I needed you to know the truth. Your father's mercy shaped my life, even though I failed to honor it. You deserve to know that he was better man than I will ever be. And you deserve to know that his death was not random. It was consequence of my cowardice. You deserve to know who to blame." "I don't blame you," Emberly heard herself say, surprising even herself. "I blame the war. I blame the politics that put you in that position. I blame the system that makes young men choose between loyalty and conscience. But I don't blame you." Through her scope, she saw Volkov's shoulders shake. The legendary Spetsnaz colonel veteran of 100 battles was crying. "Your father would be very proud," he said quietly. "Goodbye, Emberly Thorne. May we never meet again." "Wait," Volkov paused. "If you really want to honor my father's memory, there's something you can do." "Name it." "Your rifle, the one you're carrying, send it to me. I'll mount it on a wall next to my father's. A reminder that even enemies can find honor. That mercy isn't weakness. That warriors can choose peace." A pause. Then Volkov unslung his rifle, a beautiful weapon, custom-built, obviously cherished. He handed it to his spotter, who produced a carrying case. "It will be at your base within the week, along with something else. Letters your father wrote. After he spared me, I researched him. Found some of his writings on military ethics. I have kept them all these years. You should have them. Thank you." "No, thank you, Emberly Thorne, for teaching old soldier new lesson. For showing me that Garrett Thorne's legacy lives on." Volkov and his spotter turned melting back into the forest. Within moments, they were gone as if they'd never existed. Emberly remained in position for 10 more minutes, watching for any signs of betrayal. But the forest stayed empty. Volkov had kept his word. Finally, she keyed her mind. "Brennan status, still secure, no movement." "What the hell just happened up there?" "Later, I'm coming to you. Maintain overwatch." Emberly descended from the ridge, her legs shaking with exhaustion and emotional overload. The adrenaline that had sustained her for over 24 hours was finally wearing off. She'd been operating on fumes and willpower for hours. When she reached the creek bed, Brennan emerged from his hide site and pulled her into a quick hug. "You look like hell, boss." "Feel like it too." He checked her over with professional efficiency. "Shoulders injured. You're hypothermic. Probably concussed from that mortar barrage. We need to get you to medical." "I'll live, unlike some people today." The weight of those words settled between them. Unlike Petrov and Fedorov and Dmitri, unlike the enemy sniper she'd killed at 700 meters, unlike the operators she'd shot protecting Brennan, unlike her father 15 years ago in Afghanistan. "Come on," Brennan said gently. "Extraction birds inbound. 20 minutes out." They moved together through the forest, two Marines who'd survived something that would never make the news, never be acknowledged, never be celebrated. Just another classified operation buried in archives that would stay sealed for 50 years. The helicopter appeared through the storm exactly on schedule. As they climbed aboard, Emberly saw a familiar figure waiting in the cargo bay. Master Gunnery Sergeant Silas Caldwell. 68 years of warrior wisdom etched into his weathered face reached down to help her aboard. "Welcome back, Marine." Emberly collapsed onto the deck, letting the vibration of the rotors wash through her. Caldwell wrapped a thermal blanket around her shoulders and pressed a hot drink into her hands. Morrison's already writing the after-action report, he said over the engine noise. Official story is that you successfully neutralized a foreign reconnaissance element during a NATO training exercise. 2,340 meters in adverse conditions. New Marine Corps record. And the unofficial story, Caldwell's expression darkened. Volkov was running a black operation to test our winter warfare capabilities. Intel suggests he's been doing similar provocations across NATO borders for months. Your shot disrupted a major intelligence gathering effort. He's gone now, back to Russia. I know. We tracked his team's extraction. Civilian helicopter picked them up at the border 2 hours ago. By tomorrow, he'll be back in Moscow, and this whole incident will disappear into classified files. Emberly sipped the hot drink, Coffee Black Perfect. He knew my father, Gunny. He was there in 2008. Dad spared his life. Caldwell nodded slowly. I figured as much when he started talking on open channels. Garrett never told me about sparing an enemy officer, but that sounds exactly like him. He believed in mercy when tactical situations allowed it. Volkov let him die. Could have warned him about the IED, but didn't. The old sergeant's jaw tightened. That I didn't know. He wanted me to kill him, wanted me to balance the scales, but I couldn't. Dad showed him mercy, so I did too. Caldwell was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. Your father once told me that the hardest thing about being a warrior isn't learning to kill. It's learning when not to. Sounds like you figured that out today. Did I do the right thing, letting him go? I don't know, kid. Maybe there is no right answer. But I know your father would understand the choice you made, and I know I'm proud of you. The helicopter banked through the storm, heading south toward base. Emberly closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the day settle into her bones. She'd made the longest shot in Marine Corps history. She'd killed multiple enemy combatants. She'd been hunted through frozen wilderness by one of the world's most dangerous snipers. And in the end, she'd chosen mercy over vengeance, just like her father. 1 week later, Emberly stood in a conference room at Camp Lejeune, facing Lieutenant Colonel Morrison and a tribunal of senior officers. The debriefing had lasted 3 hours, covering every detail of the Montana operation. Morrison closed the classified folder and looked at her with an expression that mixed respect and concern. Gunnery Sergeant Thorne, your actions during the incident resulted in the successful protection of 43 Marines in the disruption of a foreign intelligence operation. The shot you made at 2,340 meters under adverse conditions represents the longest confirmed kill in Marine Corps history. He paused. However, your decision to allow the enemy commander to withdraw rather than pursuing neutralization has raised questions about your judgment under stress. Emberly kept her face neutral. Sir, the tactical situation had changed. First platoon was safe. The enemy team was withdrawing. Further engagement would have accomplished nothing except additional casualties. Some would argue that neutralizing a high-value target like Colonel Volkov would have been strategically valuable. Some would argue that creating a martyred Russian colonel would have escalated an already sensitive international incident, sir. Morrison's mouth twitched in what might have been approval. Indeed, for what it's worth, State Department agrees with your assessment. They're grateful this stayed quiet. He opened a different folder, this one not classified. Which brings me to your next assignment. Scout Sniper School is requesting you as an instructor. Chief Warrant Officer Caldwell specifically recommended you. He's retiring next month and wants to ensure his replacement maintains the standards he's built. Emberly blinked in surprise. Sir, I'm not ready for instructor duty. I've only been operational for You've been operational long enough to set a core record and navigate a complex tactical situation with maturity beyond your years. The school needs instructors who understand modern threats, who can teach the next generation not just how to shoot, but when to shoot and when to hold fire. Morrison slid papers across the table. It's not an order. You can decline and stay in your current billet, but Caldwell thinks you're ready. So do I. Emberly looked at the orders. Staff sergeant rank, an instructor position. A chance to teach everything she'd learned. A chance to carry forward her father's legacy and Caldwell's lessons. How long do I have to decide, sir? 48 hours. Talk to Caldwell. Think about what you want your career to look like. Then let me know. Emberly found Caldwell in the armory that evening, meticulously cleaning a rifle that probably didn't need cleaning. He looked up as she entered. Heard Morrison offered you the job. He said you recommended me. I did. You're the best sniper I've trained in 40 years. The school needs someone who understands that shooting is only half the job. The other half is knowing when not to. Emberly settled onto a stool beside him. I'm not sure I'm ready to teach Gunny. I still have so much to learn. Everyone who's worth teaching feels that way. The dangerous instructors are the ones who think they know everything. Caldwell set down his cleaning rod and turned to face her fully. Emberly, I've been doing this since Korea. 68 years old and my body's telling me it's time to retire. But I can't leave until I know the program's in good hands. Your hands. What if I fail? What if I can't live up to what you built? Then you fail, and you learn, and you get better. Same way you learned everything else. But I don't think you'll fail. I think you'll take what I taught you and what your father taught you and make something even better. He reached into his locker and pulled out a package wrapped in brown paper. This arrived this morning, diplomatic pouch, return address from Moscow. Emberly's hands shook as she unwrapped it. Inside was Volkov's rifle, a masterwork of Russian engineering, custom stock precision barrel, and beneath it a folder of papers. Letters, written in her father's handwriting. She opened the first one dated February 2008, Reflections on Mercy in Combat Operations by Colonel Garrett Thorne. Her father's words filled the pages. Philosophy about warfare and ethics, about the burden of taking life and the wisdom of preserving it when possible. About teaching the next generation to be warriors of conscience, not just warriors of skill. The last letter was addressed to her, though it had never been sent. My dearest Emberly, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry I won't be there to see you grow up, to watch you become the woman I know you'll be. But I want you to understand something important. Being a soldier isn't about killing. It's about protecting. Sometimes that requires violence, but the violence is never the point. The protection is. I've made mistakes in my career. I've taken lives I didn't need to take. I've shown mercy when maybe I shouldn't have. But I've learned that the hardest decisions are the ones that define us. If you follow in my footsteps, and I suspect you will, you stubborn girl, remember this, the truest measure of a warrior isn't how many enemies they defeat. It's how many lives they save, how many people they protect, how many times they choose the harder right over the easier wrong. Be strong, be skilled, be disciplined, but most importantly, be merciful when you can. The world has enough killers. It needs more protectors. I love you, Emberly. I'm so proud of the person you're becoming. Dad. Tears ran down her face as she finished reading. Caldwell handed her a handkerchief without comment. He knew, she whispered. He knew what I'd face, what I'd have to choose. Your father was a wise man. Wiser than me in a lot of ways. Emberly carefully refolded the letter and looked at the two rifles, Caldwell's Korean war weapon that she'd carried through Montana, and Volkov's Russian masterpiece that represented Mercy's long arc. I'll take the instructor position, she said, on one condition. Name it. We mount these rifles in the school. Students should see them, should know the stories, should understand that being a sniper isn't just about shooting straight. Caldwell smiled a rare, genuine expression. Deal. 6 months later, Emberly stood in front of her first class at Scout Sniper School. 24 students, including 3 women, all watching her with the mixture of skepticism and curiosity she remembered from her own first day. My name is Staff Sergeant Emberly Thorne, she began. Before we start, I want to tell you about 2 rifles. She gestured to the wall behind her, where Caldwell's rifle and Volkov's rifle hung side by side, each with a small plaque. The first belonged to Master Gunnery Sergeant Silas Caldwell. He carried it through Korea, through the Cold War, through every conflict that defined his generation. He gave it to me when I graduated from this program. I used it to make the longest confirmed kill shot in Marine Corps history. 2,340 meters in a blizzard. The students sat up straighter, interested now. The second rifle belonged to a Russian colonel named Dmitry Volkov, one of the most lethal snipers in modern history. I had him in my sights after that record shot. Perfect conditions, easy kill, and I let him walk away. Confusion rippled through the class. One of the male students raised his hand. Permission to speak, Staff Sergeant? Granted. Why would you let him go after making a shot like that, after having him dead to rights? Emberly looked at the 2 rifles, thinking about her father and Caldwell and Volkov, about mercy and honor and the choices that defined warriors. Because my father taught me that the truest measure of a warrior isn't how many enemies they defeat. It's how many lives they save, how many people they protect, how many times they choose the harder right over the easier wrong. She turned back to the class. Over the next 12 weeks, I'm going to teach you everything I know about being a sniper. Marksmanship, fieldcraft, observation, ballistics. All the technical skills you need to be lethal at long range. She paused, making eye contact with each student. But I'm also going to teach you something more important. I'm going to teach you when not to shoot, because anyone can learn to kill. The real skill is knowing when death is necessary and when mercy is possible. My father understood that. The man who trained me understood that. And now I'm going to make sure you understand that. One of the female students raised her hand. Staff Sergeant, what happened to Colonel Volkov? Emberly smiled slightly. Intelligence reports say he retired from active service. Last we heard he was teaching military ethics at a Russian academy, trying to be the man my father thought he could become. She moved to the front of the classroom. Here's what I want you to remember. These two rifles represent two different paths. One represents skill passed down through generations of American warriors. The other represents an enemy who learned mercy from the man he'd wronged. Emberly picked up a training manual. Being a Marine sniper is the hardest job in the military, not because of the physical demands or the technical complexity, but because you'll face choices that have no good answers. You'll have to decide who lives and who dies often with incomplete information and seconds to choose. She looked at each student in turn. I can teach you to make the shot. Your fathers, your mentors, your experience will teach you when to make it. But only you can decide what kind of warrior you want to be. The kind who kills because they can, or the kind who protects because they must. The class sat in silence, processing. Now, Emberly said, her voice shifting to professional instructor mode. Let's talk about the fundamentals. Because before you can choose when to shoot, you need to know how. Open your manuals to Chapter 1. We're going to start with the basics. As the class began, Emberly caught sight of Caldwell standing in the doorway. He'd shown up for the first day, even though retirement meant he had no official reason to be there. He gave her a small nod of approval, then disappeared. After class, Emberly found Brennan waiting outside the building. He'd transferred to instructor duty, as well teaching fieldcraft and survival. Heard your first day went well, he said. Still getting used to talking for 6 hours straight. My throat hurts more than it did after 19 hours in the snow. Brennan laughed. Different kind of endurance, but hey, you saved my life in Montana. Least I can do is buy you dinner and listen to you complain about students. Deal, but you're buying because you still owe me for that mortar barrage. Fair point. They walked together across the base, two Marines who'd survived the impossible and chosen to pass it forward. Behind them, the classroom lights dimmed. On the wall, two rifles stood, watch silent guardians of lessons learned in blood and snow. Emberly turned back to her students, carrying forward the legacy of her father, her mentor, and even her enemy. Teaching the next generation that being a sniper wasn't about the killing, it was about everything else. Outside, snow began to fall over Camp Lejeune, soft and silent, covering the training grounds in white, just like Montana. Just like that day when Emberly Thorne became the silent sniper and learned that mercy was the hardest shot of all. The story would never make the news, would never be declassified in her lifetime. But it would live on in the students she trained, in the lessons she taught, in the rifles mounted on the wall. Two weapons, two paths, one choice that defined everything. In chaos, stillness owns the battlefield. Her father's words, her mentor's lessons, her enemy's redemption. All of it compressed into one truth: warriors aren't defined by the lives they take, but by the lives they save. And sometimes the greatest victory is choosing not to fire at all. Years later, long after Emberly had trained hundreds of Marines and Caldwell had passed away peacefully in his sleep, a package arrived at her home. Inside was a letter written in Russian, translated into English. Dear Emberly, I am writing to you from my final days. The doctors say I have perhaps a month. Cancer from years of exposure to battlefield toxins. Ironic that war kills me in the end, just slowly. I wanted you to know that I spent the last 15 years trying to honor your father's mercy and yours. I taught young Russian soldiers about honor in combat, about the wisdom of restraint, about the difference between warriors and murderers. Many laughed, some listened, a few understood. I tell them about an American colonel who spared my life when I deserved death, about his daughter who did the same, about mercy being the truest form of strength. Your father saved my life in 2008. You saved my soul in 2024. I die grateful for both. There is a monastery in the mountains where I have asked to be buried. They will place a marker. Here lies a soldier who learned mercy from his enemies. Thank you, Emberly Thorne, for teaching old dog new tricks. Thank you for showing me that Garrett Thorne's wisdom transcends borders and flags and all the things we think divide us. May you live long. May you teach many. May your father's legacy continue through you. With respect and gratitude, Dmitry Volkov. Emberly read the letter 3 times, then carefully placed it in a frame beside her father's final letter. Two men from opposite sides of the world, both shaped by the same choice made twice mercy when vengeance was easier. She looked at the rifles on her wall, Caldwell's, Volkov's, her father's, which had been returned to her years ago. Three weapons that had taught her the most important lesson of all. The best shot is sometimes the one you don't take, and the truest victory is measured not in bodies but in souls.